So it's 4 o'clock on a, not summer, but spring summer sort of day, and it is currently dusk lighting outside. It's been dark and overcast and raining all day, so we're gonna try this with artificial lighting. I think it's gonna work okay. Initial tests suggest that the color is gonna be fairly accurate, so fingers crossed. And if you don't see this, obviously it turned out really badly. Anyway, I'm Emily. I'm going to be talking about the crafting that I've been doing the past couple of weeks. It's been really knitting heavy, but I'll talk about why that was. If you've come back, you've seen this before, thanks for coming back. If you're new, thanks for being here. I hope you enjoy it. So, let me just back and say, I joined Ravelry late 2013. If you're not familiar with it, it's a knitting and crochet pattern database and a way to keep track of all of your stash and your projects and so on and so forth. And prior to that, I hadn't been doing a ton of knitting, and I had some yarn, but it was kind of like yarn that I'd gotten, but I didn't really know what I was going to do with it or things like that. So I've kind of been wanting to use up that older yarn, but just haven't been, making the point of actually doing it. So in the past couple of weeks, I decided that I was going to just really crack down and use up that yarn, use it for projects, and then be left with just yarn that I've bought specifically for certain projects that I intend to make, which I did really well on. I finished four projects, which was basically like 9 different items, because some of them had multiple items within that single project, in the past 2 weeks, mostly in the first week of that 2 weeks. The second week I've kind of slowed down because I've got a couple of my bigger projects using this yarn. So anyway, I'm going to show you what I've done. I'm pretty proud of it. So let's start with the stuff that you saw as works in progress last video. The first one is these flowers. The pattern is for an Irish crochet necklace by Annie Potter. And so you're supposed to make this and kind of put it on a little like strip that you put and you wear as a necklace. I don't know, it's a necklace. But I didn't want to make it as a necklace. This is not actually older yarn. This is an Aurora silk lace weight hand dyed that I found a little ball of in a thrift store. And so I crocheted these flowers and the rose and the leaves and then these violets. And in the last video I'd finished crocheting the flowers, but I hadn't yet put them in the frame. So what this is I took an old scrap of muslin that I had, and I used the yarn that I'd used to crochet the flowers because it's pretty thin, and I used that to sew the flowers down to this piece of muslin, and then I stretched this piece of muslin over a piece of foam board that I'd cut to fit this little frame, which I'd picked up at like the dollar store. And then once I did that, I stretched the muslin over the foam board using some of the like framing tutorials that I've seen. And so once that was done, I stretched it. I actually ended up lacing the back, and then I put the cover back on. I ended up having to staple this back in because the foam board was as thick as the whole back was, and so the little clippies that hung, that attached this were not thick enough to really attach it, so I just stapled it down. And now I've got that hanging on the wall. I've got a kind of like wall display area of all of the painting and artwork that I've finished. It's up there where I can see it, and so this hangs above that as another piece of artwork that I've done. So I'm done with that fully. Excellent, I've got space to put things. Then I was making a colorwork hat for a friend of mine. And I made this out of this cream-colored yarn. Ooh, I'm totally in the darkness. Let me try this way. This cream-colored yarn is just a kind of DK weight mystery. I believe that it's a non-superwash wool acrylic blend, but I don't know for sure, but that's just the best I can tell from burn and bleach testing. And this green here is Knit Picks palette in the grass colorway. It's a fingering weight, 100% wool, non-superwash yarn. So the whole hat is hand wash only. And I just, because it's fingering weight, I just held it double to make a DK weight. And this hat pattern here is the Beware of Dragons hat by Holly Marie. And so when last you'd seen it, I had a little bit of ribbing here, and then the hat, when I knit everything on size 7s, but the ribbing was just way too loose. I could tell it wasn't going to hold the hat on ahead. So what I did was I basically snipped the ribbing, took it off, and started knitting. Actually, I may have done that when you last saw this. Anyway, I knit the ribbing a lot longer on size 5s. I knit it until it was long enough to really double up, so that when you put it on, it is doubled over your ears to keep you warmer. And the whole hat is not really in view at this point. It's these dragons, which is really cool. The top of the hat, it was supposed to be with color work, but both the recipient and I didn't particularly care for the color work, so we decided to just do it in cream. And the decrease pattern was a little bit unusual, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, I'll do that. I mean, I realized that it was so that it would work with the color work, but I was still like, that's pretty cool. And it's just kind of a little bit like weirdly flat and wrinkly. I think that if I were doing it again, I would probably just use like a more typical decrease that I've used on other hats, where you're not trying to accommodate color work. But anyway, I am quite pleased with this hat, and it has been blocked over a balloon to help all of the stitches be nice and neat. Basically, I blew up a balloon and I washed the hat, and then I put it over the balloon, and the balloon kind of held it so that all of the stitches would be evened out. Quite happy with that. So that was my second finish. Then I had a little bit of that cream DK weight blend left over. Lily, my dog is barking at people walking in front of the window. And so the friend that I've been making the hat for has cats, and I've made cat toys before with this kind of, basically what I do is I take the yarn and I hold it double with a piece of embroidery floss that I've got to make like a little marled color work thing. So I made 4 little cat toys out of the leftovers. This, wait, where's his face? Okay, his face is this way. This is a little octopus. You can see he's got a purple top and a lighter purple bottom because I ran out of the purple that I was holding with the top a little bit early. This is an octopus cat toy by Jennifer Reeve, who's also, I think her designer name is like Crafty Kitten. It's very cute. I liked it a lot. Oh, I did all of these with the F hook with crochet. They came out a little bit smaller than the last cat toys I made because the yarn was a DK weight and the last one I made was like an Aran weight, so the yarn was a little bit smaller, so they came out smaller, but I think they're still the correct cat toy size. And last time I put, I stuff them with fiber film, and last time I made cat toys I put catnip in with the stuffing. Because these are going to be shipped to Australia, and Australia is very picky about plant matter, I didn't put any catnip in these, but you can just like stick them in a jar of catnip and they'll pick up the scent. Then the next one I made is this little guy, and this is from the Ahimsa catnip mouse toy designed by Jenna Greer. And it's, to be honest, this one, because it's a little bit smaller and the way its face came out, looks more like a shrew than a mouse to me, but whatever. So I did this little guy with a little brown embroidery floss for his body, and then I gave him black eyes and then pink ears and a little pink nose. I think he's super cute. I really like this one. This is one of my favorite cat toy patterns. And then I made 2 little balls, one in yellow, one in blue, and these are just, they're just like the octopus's head, but a little bit smaller. I just used the octopus pattern, and instead of like taking his head and making it a little bit, his head's a little bit taller than it is around, and then it comes to the base and you do the tentacles. That's the word I'm looking for, tentacles. You do the tentacles. And so with these, I just didn't make them quite, okay, hang on, color. I didn't make them quite as tall, and I didn't do tentacles, obviously, because I just wanted little balls. So, 2 little cat toys. Little cat toy funness. The last ones I made, it wasn't with this yarn, it was with a cotton yarn, and apparently they held up really well to a multi-cat family that really liked them, so I'm hoping these will last well, because apparently the cats in question tend to be rough on their toys, so hopefully it'll work out. So yeah, and then the last thing that I finished, let me figure out which bag it's in. This is a pattern that I'm probably going to mispronounce because I believe that it's Swedish. It's Starna by Carolina Eckerdal, and it makes these little stars. And there's, oh hey, that's a little bit that needs to be snipped off. She has like 2 variations on it. There's this star that doesn't really have any particular dividing line on the inner parts, and then this star, you can see this is kind of a little division that makes it have like a smaller star in its middle, and it just kind of makes these a little bit more angular as opposed to being a little bit more rounded, and you know, you can kind of shape them as you like. So I made 2 of the ones without that and then 1 with. And these are made out of, I don't know what this is. This was another of my old yarns that I don't actually know what it is. I'm trying to get it to show. It's actually sparkly. It's like a beige colored yarn with like a gold sparkle on it. Okay, there you go. I think you can kind of see it there. Can you see that sparkle there? A little bit? Maybe? Anyway. It's just a sparkly gold yarn. And my plan is to kind of hang them in like a little bit of a 3 arrangement above the lamp that's at my bedside table. I think it'll be interesting to have like the sparkly ones. I think the sparkle will catch the light nicely. And I'm just going to take some fishing line and run it through here, and then put a push pin in the ceiling and do that for how to hang them. But anyway, I got that, and so I finished off that yarn. So yeah, I finished off, I finished off the cream colored yarn here. I've still got more of the green, but I've got a couple balls of it and I'm using it for other projects. And then I finished off the gold sparkle. And that's what I finished. Oh, and for the record, I did these with a US size 3 needle, which is a 3.25 millimeter. This is kind of a sport weight yarn, and that was pretty tight. This was an interesting one. It was not designed the way I expected. I expected you to like kind of do each point around, but instead you actually start with this whole circumference and you work in. It's a little bit difficult, and I would actually, personally, I would advise you not do what the pattern designer advises. She, because you knit one side and then you knit the other side, and she advises you to pick up the stitches from for the side that you're going to knit second right after you've cast on for the first side. And I found that that was really clumsy, and it was really easy to pick up the stitches after you knit the whole first side. So if you end up doing this, I would recommend that you knit one side fully and then turn it over and pick up stitches, rather than casting on, picking up stitches, and then knitting the first side and then the second. Anyway, just a minor aside, if you're interested in this pattern, it is free on Ravelry, so it's pretty cool. I like it. So that was what I'd finished. And then let's take a small break from the knitting and crochet and talk about the needlework projects that I'm still working on. So I'm still working on my Morning Flight. It's a Dimensions kit. It's got this eagle taking a nice flight. And I'm trying to remember where it was when you last saw it. I'm working on this quarter of the pattern right now. And I believe that I had done these columns and not this column when you last saw it. So I did this column, and what I've been doing is I do all the cross stitches, and then I look and I see, is there any back stitching I can do that's completely covered by these cross stitches? So for example, this branch is entirely back stitched within the area that I've cross stitched. if that makes sense. So I do all the cross stitches and then I do any back stitching that's like fully covered. Like this branch, I've not back stitched yet because it's got more going off this way that I need to get the cross stitching done before I back stitch it, obviously. And then once I've done any back stitching, I'll pull out any gridding thread that I'm no longer going to need. So that is this one. I'm thinking this one's probably going to take a break after this for a while. I've been really focused on it, but I'm starting to feel like working on my Heaven and Earth Designs project again soon. So that'll probably be my next one after I finish. Sorry, the pattern ended up on the floor way far away from where it was supposed to be. So I'm also doing the Round in Circles Heart Hanger Stitch Along by Mabel Figworthy. It's a year-long stitch along, and every month you get a more exciting, basically you go from like easier to harder patterns, and so you learn a lot of typical heart hanger stitches and stuff. It's really cool. And so the designer had some family issues earlier this year, so we're a little bit behind. We got the May pattern like mid to late May, and I didn't start it until, I want to say, last week. So this is the May pattern. Now she's doing her patterns, she's got a couple different suggestions. She's suggesting either do like this, which is 2 different colors on white, like a lighter green and a darker green, or she suggested doing it in all white on a colored fabric. I'm doing a lot more traditional, like an all white on white with silver accents. And I'm not fully done with that block. So I'm trying to see this so you can actually like see. Okay, I'm just gonna be in the dark and you're gonna have to deal with it. So I've done this whole thing. I've not done the filling stitches, so I need to wrap these areas where, so this is where I've pulled out stitches, but I haven't done any actual embroidery on that section. And it's interesting, I actually really like the look of this, where you've just pulled out the stitches and you've just got like these straight lines and then the woven sections and the straight lines. But no heart hanger that I've ever seen has like left that. It's always been, you need to do whatever stitching to fill this in. So anyway, so I'm going to do that in white, and I'm going to have silver beads on here. This is all in white, and then this, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it with my lighting situation, is like an alternating silver Petite Treasure braid and white pearl cotton chain. Oh, here, I think you can kind of see that there's like a little bit of sparkle in it there. So anyway, that's what I'm working on right now, and I'm going to finish that one up as soon as I can because I've had to put my Q-snap on top of the previous things, and there's actually beads under this Q-snap thing. I realized that there was no way that I was going to be able to put this Q-snap on without hitting a bead somewhere. I think they're okay. I don't think they've been damaged, but I'm basically not going to take it off until I'm, you know, done with this segment and waiting for the next, just because I don't want to risk like putting it on and off and on and off and increasing the chances of damaging them. So fingers crossed that when I take this off, nothing bad's under there. I'll let you know. I think they're okay though. So that was what the stitching I've been doing, and I've just kind of been focusing on, you know, 1 or 2 things at a time really, and not doing a lot of switching up there, although I've been doing a lot more with my knitting. So I've got 2 more projects that are both knitting to show you. The last of my yarn that I was wanting to use up is in these 2 knitting projects, so as soon as they're done, I'm done with that yarn that I wanted to use up, which is really cool. I'm excited. So I'm going to start with a pair of colorwork gloves. They're called Freya by Emmy Patterson. I believe that they're free on Ravelry, although I've had the pattern printed out for a long time, so I can't remember for sure. And they look like this. Just nice stranded colorwork mittens. And with the yarn that I have, again, this is mystery yarn. I don't know what brand it is. These are basically fingering weight acrylic yarns, a pink and a white. So I'm doing color work with the 2 of them. And like this, you think there's a pretty good contrast. Unfortunately, when it comes to the individual strands, the contrast is not as good. So it's a little bit hard to see this pattern. I think I'm going to just continue with it because I do think that especially as you get more of the pattern, it'll be more obvious, and it's just a nice kind of subtle one. So you can kind of see, I'm fighting with the lighting here. This is like the front of the glove. There's this kind of like swoopiness. And then on the back, okay, sorry. This is the front of the mitten. It's got like two swoops that are going to come up and do like a heart-shaped thing. And then you can actually see the first row of upside down hearts. So little upside down hearts that are barely visible. So I'm knitting this, let's see, US size 2, 2.75 millimeter, just like Susan Bates, I think is the brand, just the cheapy double pointed needles you can get at a craft store. I like them just fine, and they're working fine for this. Sorry, I'm trying to show you the actual pattern, but it's not wanting to show up. Oh, there you go. So, anyway, this is just the left-hand glove, cuff, starting from glove. I keep saying glove, they're actually mittens. So, and then there's just the beginnings of a thumb gusset. You make, the glove gets a little bit bigger to go around your thumb. And that's relevant because that'll be why I didn't do a specific project with the previous, with the next yarn. Okay. So, the last project that I'm working on is Metallurgy, which is a shawl by Very Busy Monkey, and I have to mention that, is that not the best, like, monkey knitting logo? She has balls of yarn and buttons. It's the cutest. Anyway, and so this shawl, it's basically a garter stitch shawl with this kind of swirly edging that I really like. And the yarn that I'm knitting this with was basically, again, a mystery unknown acrylic that was like a DK weight. But I had two issues with it. One was just the pattern I picked. I previously knit a pair of gloves with this, but it didn't have a thumb gusset at all. So it was just basically a tube, and it expected like all of this part of your thumb to just like not exist or something. I was not happy with it, so I ended up ripping it out. So that's why the yarn is in like a bunch of little sections now. And the other thing that's a problem with this yarn is it's very loosely plied, so it's very easy to pull it apart. So what I decided to do with it, because I was looking at it and I was like, I don't really have enough yardage for anything that I really want to do with it. It's very silky, very soft, but it's just, like, it's not great for, like, hats or whatever. It wouldn't make a terribly warm hat, which is about what I have the yardage for. So I decided to split it. It's got 6 plies in it, and I basically just pulled it apart into 3 2-ply sections. And I wound them on my Niddy Noddy, and I wound them into balls, and it was a pain in the butt. But I ended up with a yarn that's about a light fingering weight. Like so. It's 2 of these strands. And so I'm using US size 5 or 3.75 millimeter needles, and this is the beginnings of the Metallurgy shawl. And basically you've got like 1 wedge and then 2 kind of like, well, they're wedges, but they're more like, this one's kind of equilateral and these are not. And you've not seen this before. This Progress Keeper is not marking actual progress right now. I'll move it up to where I am after this video so you can see in the future where I'm at. But right now, this is just marking the front because the front and the back are basically identical on this shawl so far. They'll be identical until I get to the end and I work on the ribbing. It's a lot of fun to knit. I am a little bit concerned because she tells you in the pattern that you're going to use about half of your yardage on the edging and half on the middle part, which is what I'm working on right now. And I'm a little bit worried that the yardage that I have is not going to make, like, it's going to make more like a bandana sized scarf instead of a scarf sized scarf. It's shawl sized shawl, scarf sized shawl, whatever. It's one of those like shallow crescent shawls that people usually wear as a scarf. Honestly, I mostly want it to hang on the wall. I've got a charcoal gray lace shawl that I've done that hangs on my wall, and I wanted to hang this like above it as a cream colored non-lace shawl to kind of have like that contrast and use them as more like art. So I'm not super fussed if it's not like huge, but I'm also like hoping that it's going to be big enough to not look silly next to the other one. I think it's probably going to be okay because my yardage is about what she calls for, and I'm generally really terrible at estimating yardage. Like, I thought I wasn't going to have enough cream color to do like the whole hat in cream, and clearly I had enough cream color to increase this and make cat toys. So my experience is that I'm not a terribly good estimator of yardage. So hopefully, since I tend to underestimate what I have, hopefully that means that this will end up being big enough for what I want it for. Anyway, if it's not, I'll rip it out and do something else, I guess. I don't know. It seems, I'm not super fussed about it. It's been fun to knit. So anyway, yeah, that's where I'm up to. I've really not been doing anything that's not either knitting or, well, or crochet or stitching. I say knitting when I mean knitting or crochet. Really, I should say like yarny things or something. It's just that I knit primarily, so that's what I think of, but I also, like, I don't have anything against crochet, except that I don't, like, it hurts my wrist to do it for too long. So, yeah, that is, yes, per my notes, that is everything that I've gotten done. It's actually, like, accomplished a lot. So now I just need to focus on these two knitting projects and also the Hardanger piece, because I want to get that Q-snap bar off of it as soon as possible. And I think when I get done with the Hardanger piece, which will probably be in a day or two, that I'm probably going to go back to my 4 Heavenly Beasts Heaven and Earth design, which I will show you next time around if I do indeed go back to it, because I didn't think to grab it. And knitting-wise, I expect to be working on both of these projects for the next 2 weeks, and I might finish them in 2 weeks, but I kind of doubt it. So, anyway, that's where things are at. I hope you enjoyed watching. Let me know if you have any questions or want me to elaborate on anything. I'm always happy to do so. I will talk to you sometime in the future. Bye!